Hey there, this is Nina Song. I am here in South Korea, in the motherland, staying with a friend that moved here maybe, I think 5 or 6 years ago or so. I knew her from Jubilee, and she's one of the people that set me on this path to understand the ways of the Spirit. And she's helped me to interpret my dreams and kind of first hear the voice of God on my own for the first time, and to be able to interpret the different images and the pictures that I was getting. And so I felt like before I came here that I was supposed to read some of my old blog entries and also record it so that I could recount what God has done, and not just reminisce and remember, but to remember what God has done so that it could activate things for the future, and so I could lay a solid foundation of what He's done with the history that I have with God. So this is on my blog. It's on ninasong.wordpress.com. It's entitled, the blog itself is called Insights, and the theme for that is Activate, Calibrate, and Release. And so this blog itself was written about a year or so ago. It's called One Lifetime. I wrote it a few days after my birthday, just from looking back at what God has done in my life thus far. And so I'm going to read it so that I could remember and build on that. So here we go. It's called One Lifetime. 5 different countries, 7 different states, 4 major mentors, 3 training schools, 2 totaled cars, and 1 beautiful relationship with God. This season's theme has been having an apostolic heart and prophetic insight. My life thus far has been peppered with divine appointments, seasoned by supernatural experiences and encounters with seers, young prophetic voices, dramatic and subtle deliverances, and the power and leading of God. I've been blessed with opportunities to speak, teach, preach, sing, spit spoken word, to train and inspire, activate and empower not just God's church, but His kingdom. I've set myself on a journey of living in radical obedience to God, and now looking back at the heights, the costs, the wins, the wars, the victories, and the scars, I can see the seasons of development, the maturity, and the growth. I'm not who I was when I started this journey, not yet at the destination, but by God's grace, I've been blessed with many lifetimes in this life, and my heart is bigger still. In this lifetime, I've worked in ministry and nonprofits, in startups, speaking at university and college campuses, political advocacy, and business management. I've had the privilege of being part of raising up $100,000 for hurricane relief, $300,000 to empower Asian American communities to rock the vote in Orange County, to help raise up Ivy League students from across the nation, speak at one of the top 5 high schools in the nation, mentored and trained up church leaders to be launched into ministry, marketplace, and the kingdom. I've been changed and trained and seen the deliverance of seers and empaths, physical healings in different nations, and recently, 500% financial growth at a local church. So I think I'm a little tired. A ministry house's upgrade and deliverance of those being tormented by demons. I testify. I'm a living witness, and I testify of being used as a channel to see God bring physical healing of a missions-based leader, the elderly and the young, blind eye seeing, a finger growing out, bodily pain instantly disappearing, and some bodily pain gradually disappearing. Mental illnesses being healed, relationships being restored, families being reconnected, freedom for senior pastors in Brazil and America, prophetic intercession and breakthrough for friends, strangers, and the curious. The good, the bad, the everyday, and the ugly, and all the while sleeping in hammocks, ministering in the Amazon jungle, walking in the mud in the pouring rain, having 60 simultaneous bites from mosquitoes, machuca flies, and Jurassic-sized ants. Living on missions bases in one room with 8 people, sleeping in airports and outdoor gazebos, showering in tarp tents on the dirt, having constipation and diarrhea from foreign foods, and in Christian houses full of believers, pastors, ministers, missionaries, and leaders. It's been disgusting, horrible, beautiful, and glorious all at the same time. In warfare, as there is explosive breakthrough and outpouring, there's also multi-layered, multifaceted, intensive warfare to meet me there. And in the midst of it, what I do know is that as there are more attacks, more life births forth in resurrection power, because God is faithful. And we know that the attacks on our life will match the calling as well too. so we use it as preparation and custom-tailored training. I've had the privilege to be spoken into and raised up by deliverance ministers, apostles, prophets, pastors, healing ministers, powerful preachers, intensely strong alphas, pioneers, militant trainers, charismatic leaders, mobilizers, brothers, and friends. And they showed me their battle scars, their histories, their anthems and methodologies. And without them and their faithfulness and obedience to God's call to invest into a feisty little Korean American female like me, against all odds and social stigmas, the best of me would have never existed. And to them, I am truly grateful. In this lifetime, I've had the opportunity to minister to inmates, the homeless, prostitutes, to drug addicts, to ex-cons, to drug dealers, to victims of abuse, to abusers, to rapists, the rich, to the poor, the middle class, to Christian haters, to Christian agnostics, to non-believers, to non-believing believers, to college students, to youth, to kids, to adults, to ministry leaders, and worst of all, to pastors' kids. I'm just kidding. You know that I love you. I really do. I've had the privilege to spearhead 3 ministries, speak at retreats and seminars, create 2 women's conferences, do prophetic training one-on-one and in groups, started an inter-club campus social justice ministry and chapels, helped with the South Central church plant, helped with the Bellevue church plant, ministered in Washington, Maryland, Oregon, Hawaii, New York, California, and Idaho, seen physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. I've gotten to speak about the gifts of the Spirit to churches who don't believe in the gifts of the Spirit. Preach, teach, and speak to churches that don't believe that women should preach, teach, and speak in public and in churches. And as I've lived in communion and conversation with a supernatural God, I've learned to live a naturally supernatural life. I've learned to let go of all comforts, rights, privileges, and luxuries, reputations, and social ladders, to fight for the rights of minorities, of women, children, the trafficked, the abused, the targeted, the poor, the sick, and for those who have been through devastation, trauma, and natural disasters. I've learned to let life go to see life restored. And as I lay down these burnt offerings, I've seen God inspire leaders to start campus movements, to start speaking up and out for the marginalized, to start women's empowerment events, to plan mission trips, to give their lives to the needy, to get their medical and professional degrees, to train and empower the poor in different countries, to pray for healing and to see healing break through, to see spiritual gifts and callings confirmed, trained, and activated for the work of the ministry. And one of my favorites, starting an underground safe house in a foreign land. I've learned to offer up my talents, gifts, skills, and voice as a living sacrifice to be a voice for those who have none. And He has been more than faithful to this little heart of mine. To me, God has always been a prophetic God. He speaks through pictures, through music, through poetry, and art, as much as through powerful speaking and collaborating and mobilizing. I've had a jazz band and had the opportunity to perform at galas in front of elected officials and at wedding receptions as grandparents and kids and couples dance while my band and I would play a little Sinatra. I've done spoken word, worship, and hip-hop, jazz fusions with beatboxers and background dancers, singing at places like UCLA, Biola, Collaboration, Asian Elevation, churches, retreats, conferences, a festival in downtown LA, and I've seen the Spirit of God unleashed in front of hundreds and into thousands. I've spoken for arts panels at large churches to incorporate creativity into worship, and have helped to raise money for missions, and I loved every minute of it. And my favorite part of it was when my bandmates and I would talk to and pray for those who came to talk to us after the shows. I've had the privilege of being part of various moves of God, such as GXP, USC, Jubilee, Ecclesia, Theophilus, BSC. Having trained at supernatural schools, conferences, and moves such as IHOP, Bethel, YWAM, Catalyst, Atroc, The Call, and sat at the feet of seasoned apostolic and prophetic leaders and pioneers with decades of accelerated experience. In my lifetime and my spare time, I've been an intercessor, a speaker, a preacher, a trainer, a watchman, a healing minister, a missionary, an equipper, a pastor, an empowerer, and an activator. So in the face of all that and in backlash, I've been through emotional trauma, physical trauma, spiritual abuse, sexual harassment, mockery, slander, false accusation, betrayal, rejection, false labeling, persecution, threats, silencing, 5 attempted crucifixions, blacklisting, 30 stitches, and 8 hours in the ER, 2 life-threatening car accidents, and no broken bones. And God has used that as fuel for 3 resurrections in 5 different nations, multiple healings, healing of cancer in my family twice, family restoration, and massive breakthrough. And in the midst of these microscopic little realignments, I've seen atmospheres shifted, cultures shaped, mindsets recalibrated, hearts broken and enlarged, communities restored, people healed, and callings launched. I've heard it said many years ago that we've got to define what success is for ourselves so that when we see it fulfilled, we'd be able to recognize it. So as the years have gone by, my definitions of success have gone from being all the small things that you will do will echo into eternity, which is Mother Teresa, one of the most beautiful women who walked upon the face of this earth. And William James, will you live a life that will outlast itself? Will you break out of the rat race and have the courage to learn to hear and follow the voice of God, even when it's counterintuitive, even when it's countercultural and unpopular and invites in persecution and painful sacrifice? Will you fight to learn to empower and raise up, heal, and bring breakthrough as a lifestyle? If those have been the anthems of the past, then I'm well on my way to an amazing legacy of a life lived fully and walking in the presence of God. And as God examines my heart, my spirit, and my lifetime so far, I feel like He would say, well done, good and faithful servant. You've endured, you've pushed through, you've fought the good fight, you've grown in the faith. You haven't endured yet to the point of shedding blood, but you're still young, and when you do, you know that it'll be worthwhile. And I know that there's more. There's more battles to fight, more ground to break through, more places to pioneer, more cultures to restore, more paradigms to shift, more hidden Davids to launch, more hidden diamonds to discover, more seeds to plant, more lessons to learn, more trainings to have, more fires to walk into, more torches to pass, more divine appointments to meet, more Kairos moments to be had, more schools to build, more people to empower, and I'm walking with my best friend to show me and lead me there. And so thank you, God, for a beautiful lifetime.